Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered to the stars, "Why does life seem so unfair? I only want to see the festival, not to steal anyone's glory." As the words left her lips, the air around her shimmered. From the shadows emerged an elderly woman cloaked in indigo, her staff glowing faintly with golden light. "Do not weep, child," the woman said in a voice that was both soothing and powerful. "I am your Nnechi, sent by your mother's love to guide you." In the vibrant village of Ekanu, surrounded by endless golden savannas and hills, dotted with lush mango trees, a child named Angoli was born. Her arrival was marked by the brilliance of a shooting star, a rare celestial phenomenon the elders took as an omen of greatness. Her parents, Nnadi and Adanna, were farmers who worked the fertile land with care, ensuring that their family never lacked food. Adanna, a skilled storyteller, often wove tales of resilience and love into Angoli's bedtime stories. She instilled in her daughter the values of kindness and humility. "You, my Angoli," Adanna would say softly as they looked up at the starry sky, "are like the stars, bright and meant to guide others." The family's life was perfect until Adanna suddenly fell ill. The village healer did all she could, but Adanna passed away when Angoli was just 10 years old. "Promise me," Adanna said with her last breath, "you will never let life steal your joy." Nnadi, overwhelmed with grief and burden of raising a child alone, soon remarried a widow named Nkiru, who had 2 daughters, Ngozi and Chika. At first, Angoli welcomed the new family, hoping for the warmth and companionship she had lost. But Nkiru was a sharp-tongued woman with a heart hardened by envy. She quickly grew resentful of Angoli. "You think you're special, don't you?" Nkiru sneered one evening as Angoli helped Ngozi and Chika with their chores. From that day, Nkiru relegated Angoli to the role of a servant. Her duties grew heavier each day, hauling water from the distant streams, scrubbing pots until her hands bled, and weaving intricate baskets that Nkiru sold as her own. Nnadi began to notice Nkiru's mistreatment of Angoli and confronted her. "Why are you so harsh with her?" he demanded. Nkiru feigned innocence. "I'm only trying to teach her discipline. You spoil her too much." Over time, Obi grew suspicious of Nkiru, but before he could act, tragedy struck. He fell gravely ill, his once strong body weakened by a mysterious illness. Despite Angoli's effort to care for him, Obi passed away, leaving her at Nkiru's mercy. The villagers whispered about the injustice but feared Nkiru's sharp tongue. As the years passed, Angoli grew into a beautiful young woman. Despite the hardships she faced, her beauty was matched by her inner strength, which set her apart from her stepsisters. Ngozi and Chika, though pampered by their mother, were strikingly different. Their spoiled and selfish behavior reflected in their appearances, and they were often described as plain and unremarkable. Their jealousy of Angoli's beauty and gentle nature grew with each passing day, fueling Nkiru's cruelty towards her. While Angoli toiled endlessly, cleaning, cooking, and running errands, her stepsisters idled away their time, complaining about their lives and mocking Angoli. "She's only pretty because she spends her time scrubbing the floors," Ngozi would sneer. "If she didn't work so hard, she would look just as ordinary as the rest of us." Nkiru, determined to keep Angoli's light hidden, refused to let her attend village gatherings or festivals, claiming, "Your place is here. Work for the family." One bright morning, the village square buzzed with excitement as the town crier struck his gong.
"Yeah, by royal decree, the festival of the moon will be held to celebrate the harvest. Prince Obiora, heir to the kingdom of Udala, seeks a bride. All maidens of Ekanu are invited to attend.
The announcement set the entire village ablaze with preparations. Mothers scurried to sew dazzling gowns and young women giggled in anticipation. At Nkiru's house, the excitement was palpable. Nkiru and Chika demanded the finest dresses, and Nkiru spared no effort, even selling a prized goat to afford extravagant fabrics. "You are not going," Nkiru told Angoli with a cold glare as she stitched the hem of Ngozi's dress. "You only embarrass us." On the night of the festival, as Nkiru and her daughters left in a cloud of perfume and laughter, Angoli sat by the ancient boab tree outside their home. This tree, revered as a sacred symbol of resilience, has long been her refuge. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered to the stars, "Why does life seem so unfair? I only want to see the festival, not to steal anyone's glory." As the words left her lips, the air around her shimmered. From the shadows emerged an elderly woman cloaked in indigo, her staff glowing faintly with golden light. "Do not weep, child," the woman said in a voice that was both soothing and powerful. "I am your Nnechi, sent by your mother's love to guide you." Angoli stared in awe as the woman raised her staff. In an instant, her tattered clothes transformed into a gown that sparkled like the night sky. Her bare feet were adorned with delicate glass slippers, and her unkempt hair became a crown of braided beauty. "Take this," the Nnechi said, gesturing to a small goat-drawn coach that appeared nearby. "But heed my warning. The magic will fade at the last stroke of the night. Leave the celestial before then." When Angoli arrived at the festival, a hush fell over the crowd. No one recognized her, not even Ngozi and Chika. She seemed like a vision, her gown reflecting the moonlight as she moved gracefully among the guests. Prince Obiora, seated at the head of the celebration, noticed her immediately. Rising from his chair, he crossed the courtyard and extended his hand.
"May I have this dance?"
he asked. Anuli hesitated, but the warmth in his eyes reassured her. They danced to the rhythms of drums and flutes, their laughter blending with the music. For the first time in years, Angoli felt seen, not as a servant or as an outcast, but as herself. As the first gong of midnight sounded, Angoli remembered the Nnechi's warning. Panic surged through her as she broke away from the prince. "I must go," she said hurriedly.
"Wait, I don't even know your name,"
Obiora called after her. She ran through the crowd, her glass slipper slipping off as she climbed into her couch. By the time she reached home, her gown had turned back into rags and the couch was gone. The next day, Prince Obiora announced his intent to find the maiden who had captured his heart. Armed with the glass slipper, he and his guards visited every home in Ekanu, testing it on every maiden. When they arrived at Nkiru's house, she quickly handed Angoli a pile of clothes to wash and instructed her to clean every corner of the house. "And don't come out of your room," she added sharply. Ngozi and Chika rushed to meet the prince, each eager to try on the slipper. They shoved each other aside, twisting and forcing, but the slipper wouldn't fit either of them.
"Is there anyone else?"
Obiora asked. "No," Nkiru lied. But just as she spoke, the prince heard a soft melodious voice coming from within the house. Curious, he turned to his servant.
"Find out who that is,"
he ordered. Moments later, the servant returned with a hesitant Angoli, her hands still damp from scrubbing.
"You,"
the prince said, his voice soft but commanding,
"come forward."
Angoli hesitated as her heart pounded. When she slipped her foot into the glass slipper, it fit perfectly. From her pocket, she produced the second slipper, silencing the room. Obiora knelt before her. "You are the one I've been searching for," he said. Nkiru and her daughters fell to their knees, begging for forgiveness. Angoli, with the grace instilled in her by her mother, forgave them, but chose not to return to their household. "You must live by your own hands," she said. The stepmother, Nkiru, and her daughters, Ngozi and Chika, were sulked in shame. Months passed, and Angoli became pregnant with the prince's child. Hearing the news, Nkiru and her daughters approached her again, claiming they wanted to reunite and be part of her life. Despite her initial hesitation, Angoli allowed them to visit her in the palace. Back at their home, however, Nkiru was scheming. Desperate to reclaim influence and ensure her daughters' futures, she traveled to a distant village to consult a powerful witch. The witch provided her with a potion capable of making someone fall madly in love with the first person they saw. With the potion in hand, Nkiru returned and concocted a plan. Pretending to be gravely ill, she instructed Ngozi and Chika to inform Angoli about her condition. Moved by the news, Angoli invited them to stay at the palace until Nkiru recovered. The three women were given a luxurious suite and served the finest meals under Angoli's instructions. For 2 days, they lived like royalty. Late one night, Nkiru snuck into the palace kitchen. She had carefully observed when and how the prince's meal were prepared. Seizing her opportunity, she poured the potion into the food meant for him. Returning to her quarters, she told her daughters, "Prepare yourselves. By tomorrow, one of you will capture the prince's heart and our family will rule." That evening, Prince Obiora dined unsuspectingly. Later, as he stood on the palace balcony, he spotted Ngozi sitting in the garden, brushing her hair under the moonlight. The potion took effect immediately. His heart raced, his thoughts clouded with an unexplainable infatuation. Unable to resist, he called a servant. "Bring her to me," Obiora commanded. Ngozi, who had been waiting for her moment, acted innocent as the servant escorted her to the prince. Angoli, unaware of what had transpired, was resting when she was informed that Obiora had summoned Ngozi. Confused but trusting her husband, she thought little of it. Meanwhile, in their room, Nkiru and Chika celebrated, confident that their plan was unfolding perfectly. As the days passed, Obiora's behavior towards Ngozi grew more affectionate. He would seek her out in the palace gardens, sit with her during meals, and speak of her beauty in ways that made her blush and giggle. Angoli, now heavily pregnant, watched in confusion and heartbreak as the man who had once adored her shifted his care and attention to her stepsister. At first, Angoli tried to dismiss her worries, attributing the prince's behavior to the pressures of his royal duties. But when he began openly prioritizing Ngozi, she knew something was deeply wrong. One evening, Angoli confronted him in their chamber, her voice trembling. "Obiora, what is happening? Why are you treating me this way? I am carrying your child. You act as though I don't exist." The prince's response was cold. "You have everything you need, Angoli. You live in comfort, and soon you will give birth to a royal heir. What more could you want?" Tears streamed down Angoli's eyes. "What more? I want my husband back. I want the man who loved me, who swore to cherish me. Instead, you are doting on Ngozi, my stepsister." Obiora's face hardened. "Ngozi is a remarkable woman. I've decided I would like to marry her as my second wife." Angoli gasped, her heartbreak turning to fury. "How could you do this to me? After everything we've been through, after all I have endured." But Obiora remained unmoved, leaving Angoli to cry alone in their room. Meanwhile, in their quarters, Nkiru and her daughters celebrated quietly. Soon, Nkiru whispered, "Ngozi will be queen, and will finally have the power we deserve. Chika, though slightly envious, joined in the celebration, knowing she too would benefit from their mother's schemes. The whispers of the palace staffs only fueled Anoli's anguish. Servants spoke in hushed tones about the prince's growing attachment to Ngozi and his neglect of Angoli. Her pregnancy, now in its final stages, felt like an unbearable burden as her emotional pain deepened. Days passed. Prince Obiora made a shocking announcement at a royal dinner. In light of recent events and my growing admiration, I will soon take Ngozi as my second wife. Gasps filled the room, and all eyes turned to Angoli, who sat frozen, her heart shattering. Unable to bear the humiliation, she excused herself and fled to her chambers, where she wept uncontrollably. Her once perfect world was crumbling before her eyes. That night, as Angoli cried in despair, her trusted maidservant Ada approached her with caution. Ada had served Angoli since she arrived at the palace and cared deeply for her. "My queen," Ada said softly, "I've been noticing strange things since your stepmother and stepsisters arrived. I believe something sinister is at play here." Angoli wiped her tears, looking up at Ada with weary eyes. "What do you mean?" "I've seen Nkiru sneaking around the palace at odd hours, and I overheard her speaking to Ngozi and Chika about their plans. My queen, I think they've done something to the prince." Though doubtful at first, Angoli's instincts told her that something was indeed wrong. "We must find out the truth," she said, her voice trembling with resolute. Ada suggested consulting Ebele, a revered herbalist and seer who had long served the royal family. Angoli agreed, and under the cover of the night, Ada helped her sneak out of the palace and visit Ebele. Ebele welcomed them warmly, sensing their distress. "What brings you here at such a late hour?" "My husband, he's not himself," Angoli explained. "He's abandoned me and taken an unnatural liking for my stepsister. Please, Ebele, help me understand what's happening." Ebele listened intently, then performed a divination using sacred herbs and cowrie shells. After a moment, her face darkened. "There is a powerful spell at work here," she said gravely. "A love potion, laced with deceit. It binds the prince's heart to the one he first saw after consuming it." Angoli gasped. "Ngozi?" "Yes," Ebele confirmed. "The potion was crafted by a witch and given to your stepmother, but do not despair. There is a way to break it." Ebele handed Angoli a counter potion and a talisman. "This will purify his mind and heart. You must add this to his drink tonight, and he must wear the talisman until dawn. Only then will the spell be broken." With Ada's help, Angoli returned to the palace undetected. She prepared the counter potion and personally brought it to Obiora under the guise of a peace offering. Though weary, he drank it, touched by her apparent forgiveness. She then convinced him to wear the talisman, citing its protective blessings for their unborn child. That night, as the potion took effect, Obiora was plagued by vivid dreams. He saw the truth, how Nkiru had poisoned his mind, how he had betrayed Angoli, and how deeply he had wronged her. By morning, the spell was broken. Obiora awoke in panic and rushed to Angoli's chambers. He found her sitting quietly, her eyes filled with pain. "Angoli," he said, falling to his knees before her, "I have wronged you beyond measure. I see everything now. Can you ever forgive me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "You hurt me deeply, Obiora, but I'll forgive you, not just for my sake, but for the sake of our child." Overcome with remorse, Obiora vowed to make things right. He summoned Nkiru, Ngozi and Chika to the throne room. With the court assembled, he declared their deceitful actions treasonous and banished them from the palace forever. As Nkiru, Ngozi and Chika were escorted out of the palace, the guards took them to the borders of Ekanu. Stripped of their finery, they were left with only the clothes on their backs and a pouch of food for the journey. Nkiru, furious and humiliated, cursed Angoli with every step she took. "That girl would pay for this," she muttered, but deep down she knew her scheming days were over. Ngozi and Chika were despots. Without the prince's favor, they had lost the chance to elevate their status. Worse still, the people of Ekanu, having heard of the betrayal, treated them with disdain whenever they passed through villages. "Mother, what do we do now?" Ngozi asked one night as they camped by the roadside. "We rebuild," Nkiru said, her voice bitter. "We find another way to rise, though it may take years." But her words carried little conviction. Nkiru's reputation as a schemer spread, and no one in the region was willing to trust to assist them. The family eventually settled in a small, impoverished village far from the kingdom, where they struggled to survive. Nkiru's health began to decline, and without her usual power and influence, she faded into obscurity. Ngozi and Chika, humbled by their fall, were forced to take on menial work. Over time, they grew resentful of their mother, blaming her of their misfortune. Their bond fractured and they went their separate ways, living quiet, unremarkable lives. Back in the palace, Angoli and Prince Obiora worked to heal the rift in their relationship. Though it took time, Obiora's consistent effort to show his love and remorse slowly rebuilt Angoli's trust. Their son, Prince Chijioke, became the center of their world. His birth was celebrated across the kingdom, and the people regarded Angoli as a queen of grace and resilience. Ebele, the herbalist, was honored by the royal family for her wisdom and aid. She became a trusted advisor to the court. Her knowledge of healing and protection was valued by all. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on my next one.